My bully stepdad threw away my things and pressed charges against me over $3, so I made him regret everything. When I was 16, my mom started dating a man she met online, and within 2 months, he moved in. Just 3 weeks later, he took my skateboards, my self-built half-pipe, my ramps, BMX bike, and my ice hockey gear, and drove it to dump at the junkyard while I was at school. He said he didn't want all of my crap cluttering up his garage. I told my mom about it, but by this point, he had already laid hands on her, so she was too scared to say anything. Not even another month later, he took my comic book collection and my PS2 and all my video games, and once again threw them away. This time, he did it because guys my age should be drinking beer and playing football and baseball, not being a nerd playing games and reading comics. My mom was again too scared to say anything, and she even agreed with him when he demanded she stop giving me lunch money because the little effer will just spend it on comics and other gay things. I remember one time I took $3 out of his change jar so I could buy a slice of pizza during lunch at school, but my mom saw me and told on me. He actually called the police and pressed a larceny charge against me over the $3. And when the police left, and when they did, he turned his attention towards me. The next day before going to school, my mom pressured me to lie if asked about my face. That same day, my mom told me they were sending me to military school, and when I asked why, he piped up saying it was because I was dumb and would never be anything anyway. I had a 3.9 GPA before he came into the picture. When that happened, I just ran away. I wandered the streets for a few weeks before the cops found me, and between having run away and the larceny charge, I ended up in juvie. I got out 6 months later, but by that point my mom and he had married. I moved back in with them, but because in juvie I had properly learned to fight, my stepdad stopped giving me trouble. I moved out the second I turned 18, and didn't hear a peep from them for about 5 years. But then one day my mother called me out of the blue. She had terminal cancer, and she told me she was divorcing him. She then told me how sorry she was for everything, and asked me to come live with her until she passed. She told me all about their separation agreement, and mentioned that he'd have 45 days after her death to retrieve his belongings from the house. When I heard this, I instantly thought of something. When my mother passed away 9 months later, I visited my mother's house before he did, and as expected, I found all his stuff there. I then got the first part of my revenge. I sold his baseball card collection for $14K, sold his autographed sports memorabilia for $11K, and even sold all of his woodworking equipment for $6K. I took his mother's engagement ring, her wedding band, and even took his coin collection. About a week later, I accidentally ran into him at the grocery store, and I told him what I had done as he was pushing his cart out towards his car. He was so angry he tried punching me, but when that filed because I'm no longer a skinny 16-year-old, he started ramming his grocery cart into my new car. I called police on him, and he was arrested for assault, communicating threats, and destruction of property. As a result, he lost his job at the local middle school, and because he had never learned how to save money, he had to sell his mother's house because he hired an expensive lawyer thinking he could beat the charges. His son refused to help him out, so he ended up having to take a job as a cashier at Walmart so he could afford rent on his little trailer in an awful neighborhood. I always do my grocery shopping in the Walmart he works at too, and I always go to his till just so he can ring up my purchases. Every time I go there and step into line, I see him die a little bit inside, and it may be petty, but it gives me such satisfaction. Sometimes I'll say that I'm paying with exact change, and as I'm about to hand him the money, I'll say, "Oh, I didn't realize I had rare coin from his collection in my pocket. I guess I'll pay cash."